Morning. Hello again. I am Brianna with the Leadership Institute at CSU. I am super excited for today's topic. Nico, I'm not sure if you heard of October theory, but that is something that I recently discovered this month. So the whole premise of that is to start that New Year's resolution or that new habit in October so that you have the full 90 days to get that habit going before the new year. So I think that this topic definitely aligns with that October theory. As we close out the year, this is the time to reanalyze, our routines and our balance throughout this year and how we can improve it for the years ahead. So over the next hour, I want to make this webinar as interactive as possible. So please drop all of your comments and questions in the chat. If you don't feel comfortable putting it in the general chat, feel free to send me a direct message as well. Today's webinar will be facilitated by Nico Moyer, and Nico is a diversely trained and qualified coach here in the Columbus area. Nico has 7 years of experience in special ops community with the 75th Ranger Regiment. He holds a bachelor's degree in interpersonal and relational communication. He completed his graduate studies in organizational leadership, specializing in leadership development. And Nico is a professional certified coach and supports Rangers in transition as a mentor with the Three Rangers Foundation. He is also an adjunct professor for the William B. Turner Center for Servant Leadership. And most importantly, he enjoys time with his wife, Claire, and their two dogs, Pancake and Peach. So please help me welcome Nico in the chat. And with that, you now have the floor.
Thank you so much. It's an honor to be here. I'm grateful for all who are taking time out of their day to jump into this webinar and to just have an opportunity to reflect on routines and what routines look like, what the benefits are. And yes, it's October. So what better time to kind of finish out the year trying to improve our current situation, because we know that in January, everybody's going to do their New Year's resolutions. So if we can get a head start, if we can build that practice, we can kind of avoid the trap of starting a new gym membership in January and canceling it in February. And I hope that we can have a great discussion today. As Bree said, my name is Nico Moyer. I am excited to be here. I come from Connecticut originally, and as Bree said, I was brought here to Columbus, to Fort Benning, now Fort Moore, and I served 8 years in Ranger Regiment. But before that, I was in college, and it was my sophomore year, and I woke up with no knowledge as to why, but walking straight into the recruiting station and saying, sign me up for the Army. I didn't know what was ahead. I didn't know what my options were. I just went in and did it. And that is when habits, or in this case, specifically routines, became a paramount part of my life. I enlisted in the Army my sophomore year of college. I got home and I realized, I have 1 year to leave for the Army, but I have 2 years worth of classes that I have to take. How in the world am I going to do this? So I went to the vice president of student affairs and I said, hey, look, I want to double down for the next year. I have to leave in 365 days or sooner, and I want to leave with a degree. And after a long conversation, he approved me to take a double course load. So for 2 semesters, I took 27 and 29 credits. I took a spring break class that was 8 hours a day for a whole week. I took 1 summer class and 2 winter classes, and 3 days before I shipped off to the Army, I finished school. And that is much less a humble brag and much more a brag on routines are what got me through that. Setting up my structure, setting up my day, creating a mindset around the routines of what I needed to accomplish allowed me to do what many said was impossible. Would I recommend it? Absolutely not. Would I do it again? Probably not. But it helped me learn a lot about routines and what one can accomplish when we structure our lives around the routines and around the goals that we're trying to accomplish. That being said, let's kind of lean into this slowly. So our objectives for today are, we should be able to define and describe routines, kind of what they are, understand the benefits of routines, understand not only the good, but explore some of the bad or some of the pitfalls associated with routines. And I hope at the end we'll be able to identify next steps, right? This is a webinar. I'm locked into this 45-minute area. We could talk about this all day. We could go into activities, we could go into workshops. That's not what today is about, but I will help to identify what some of those options are moving forward. So let's think about this. I talked about routines a little bit in my past life and what really planted routines as an important part of my life. But even today, it's super important for me. I'm a full-time minister. I work with college students and young adults every day. By day, I mean mostly evenings. I'm coaching. I'm a contractor here with the Leadership Institute. I have my own coaching business. I teach at CSU. Life seems busy, and a lot of people ask, well, how do you do all of this? Well, first of all, unlike many of you, I don't have kids. So I have a little extra time on my hands where I don't have to navigate school pickups and sports and these other things. So I'm blessed in that way, but can't wait to have kids. And I recognize my routines will shift as our life experiences shift. So I want to think, what is a routine? And you're welcome to answer these in the chat, especially the question in red. But think about, what is a routine? For me, for you, are routines helpful? Are they something that you consciously think about as improving your current situation, or something that's a helpful tool for you? And what I would love for you to share in the chat are, what are some routines that are currently present in your life? I know there's a lot. I know there's some we recognize, some we don't even notice. So as you're putting those in the chat, I'd also like you to think about, what routines do you engage in, but typically you're unaware. It's just one of those routines that you've fallen into. Sometimes those are good. Sometimes those can be negative, but think about that for a moment.
I will go ahead and hop in here, Nico. I think coming to work every day is one of those, normal routines that I just wake up and automatically do. Sanja says that routines are helpful as they help keep me on track day to day. Wanja says daily morning meditation and working out and eating is a part of her routine.
Yes. And when we think of routines, that's typically what we think about, right? We think about, I have a gym routine, I have a yoga routine, maybe I have a meditative prayer or contemplative practice that I do. But we almost always think about it in terms of our workouts, our diets, some of us in terms of morning routines, because that's continued to have more conversations built around it. I don't know if you've heard of Andrew Huberman. He is a Stanford neurobiologist, and he is huge in the world of routines right now. And not just routines, hey, I want to do this, this, and that, but routines that work with our neuropsychology and with the biology that we are already kind of built into. We can't change the weather. We can't change what time the sun comes up and what time the sun goes down. We might change the time twice a year of when we associate that, but it's coming up and it's going down either way. So when we can use knowledge and use our own anecdotal experiences to build out a routine, or in some cases, we would call it a lifestyle that makes us most energized and most excited and allows us the most cognitive space to do the things we want to do, that's when we can start to see improvements in our lives. So let's define routines a little bit. According to Oxford Languages, routine is simply a sequence of actions regularly followed. It's a type of fixed program. And that sounds great, and that's kind of a good, simple term, but I want to take it a step further and kind of think of this in a broader sense, in a more well-being mindset. And Berkeley Wellbeing Institute defines a routine as a repeated sequence of behaviors that do not require conscious effort or thought, right? We're not having to say, okay, it's this time I have to do this. That might be the case when we're building our routine, but what happens is that routine becomes something that we're able to just fall into. And also, we want it to minimize the unpredictable variability of everyday life. I think, and feel free to challenge this in the chat, I think a lot of us are here because we're like, I need routines so I can have more control. So when these things that pop up, they don't ruin my whole day. And like I said, I'm in ministry, so I have to recognize that there are nights where I'm going to get a call at midnight and it's going to ruin my sleep routine. There are days where things just come up and I'm going to have to pivot for that. So we'll get into this later, but with our routines, we want structure, but we still want flexibility. In my spine, I have the structure of my spine to hold me up, but the muscles allow the flexibility for it still to move a little bit. If I'm too flexible, that can create problems. If I'm too rigid, that can create problems. So just like routines, just like most of the things in life, what we're seeking here is balance. And we're going to talk about what routines really can offer us as we begin to assess, play with, and improve our current routines as they exist in our lives. So my goal here today is to recognize routines. What are they good for? As we mentioned in the previous definition, we want to minimize the unpredictable variability of everyday life. Well, how do we do that? And what does that entail? Well, first, we should be finding balance. Routines help us to create and increase predictability. We want to build discipline. Routines are going to do that. They're going to promote consistency. They're going to promote discipline. And ultimately, we want to live better, which is a task in and of itself, but also a task that is the culmination of finding balance and building discipline. And routines are going to help us conserve that mental energy. It's going to give us the opportunity to do the things we love while also accomplishing the tasks that we have at hand, the responsibilities that we've accepted. Once we have kids, once we take a dog into the house, once we have a job, all of a sudden we're like, I have all these responsibilities and I'm not able to do these things that bring me joy or that energize me or that fuel me. And my goal here today, if nothing else, is to help you find a way to protect your time, to protect your sanity, and to use routines to predict what your life is like, or to have options for when the unpredictable variability occurs. Well, I've got a routine for that. Now, we'll talk a little bit about the difference between habits and routines. I won't get into it deep right now. Why? Well, when you go to Barnes & Noble and you buy a bestseller, habits and routines is often used interchangeably. A lot of people think of it synonymously. Now, if you start looking into academic research and you start reading white papers, you will want to actually keyword search routine, because there are nuances that are different between routines and between habits. And typically, habits rely on cues, right? So there might be a cue that allows me or triggers me into a certain habit, where routines, as we mentioned in the definition previously, we should be setting them up and then they should become almost an unconscious flow of life. My morning routine, I don't think about each thing that I need to do. I did when I built it, and now I just wake up and do it. Sometimes I'll get through it and I think, wait, I just did all that and I didn't even think of it. Think about when you drive home. You're like, man, were my eyes closed the whole time? How did I get? I didn't even process, excuse me, I didn't even process turning down that street. I don't even remember the traffic at that spot. It's so routine for us, we just go. Some of y'all, you wake up and before you know it, the kids are in the car and you're at the drop-off line. And you're like, I did not even process this.
And
And
Nico,
that's
it's funny that you say that, because a lot of the comments, Jennifer said putting a coffee pot on is just a part of her routine. We all have those different things that we just automatically do, such as driving home. And I think that this slide is important because, as you mentioned throughout the beginning of this conversation, routines are going to change. Life happens and life doesn't stop happening because you have a routine. So we constantly have to remember to to adjust so that you can still have time to fulfill the things that fill your cup and fill up your pot. So I think that this slide is definitely important and is something that we need to remember as we go into this topic a little.
Absolutely. And I could not agree more. And I hope that you'll recognize throughout this some tools that will allow you to have that flexibility within the structure that we all require. And I love this kind of quote slash insight from Sabat et al. When our routines are disrupted, that's when we begin to recognize, wow, there's some depression or anxiety starting to boil up here. Um, 4 years ago now, I lost my house to a house fire. And guess what? My routines were kaput. I could not function the same way. All my routines, my fitness, my diet, everything changed. And luckily I had an amazing support system and my wife is just perfect. So I was able to navigate that, but it definitely challenged a side of anxiety and angst that I had never experienced before, even having been in the military, even having some extraordinary opportunities in life. So sometimes we don't recognize how important these routines are in our lives until they're ripped away from us or until that interrupter comes in and messes up that morning routine. Think about when you eat lunch every day at 12 o'clock and then one day you miss lunch. Well, by 2 o'clock, you're like, why am I so cranky? Why am I so short with everybody? Why am I so frustrated? And if we can recognize, it's because we broke our routine, a routine that was keeping us nourished, a routine that was helping us manage our energy, all of these different things. And we're going to dive right into this some more here. So routines, finding balance. How do they help us find balance? Well, they improve productivity. When we start building routines, we can begin to prioritize our tasks. We can begin to balance out what's important right now and what can wait, which in turn helps reduce the overwhelm, right? I've been in seasons where I say yes to so much, I don't prioritize things. And then there's a Friday and I'm like, I have the weekend off. No, I don't. I have a big list of tasks that I have to do and I'm overwhelmed and I feel the weight. And it provides stability. It gives us a sense of safety and security, and it can improve our mental health. And we'll see that in multiple different ways as we continue to discuss this, but we begin to feel more empowered and confident and in control. And look, I'm not ignorant to this. I know we are not in control of our lives to the extent that we wish we were, but this is one step. And in the Army, we call it control the controllables. And that's all we're trying to do. I'm not trying to change what time the sun rises, but I'm going to change what I do within my mornings to set me up for success. They continue to help by building discipline. It establishes frameworks for us to work in. A lot of my routines, and we'll discuss this later on, are really frameworks. And there's some flexibility within that framework. And there's also flexibility for me to move that within my calendar based on those things in life that come up. This helps us create good habits. It should help us avoid procrastination. Sometimes there's other factors that we also need to keep into account. It helps us by focusing on those important tasks. Once we've prioritized, once we've found that balance, now as Cal Newport would call it, I could get into that deep work and I could come in here for 45 minutes, get that important task done, and that frees me up to start focusing on other things. And I don't reach that decision fatigue of where do I even start? You know, you could put a hand up if you want. How many of y'all have been there? You're like, I have so much. I don't even know where to start. And there's so many different ways to write out our tasks list, and there's different tools we can use, but sometimes it is simply overwhelming. And it can help us set up automatic patterns. This I first became aware of this. I read a book by David Bach called The Automatic Millionaire. And he basically talks about take the amount that you spend on coffee each day and automatically invest that. And eventually your goal should be to invest 10% and automatically have it auto increase 1% each year. So as a young guy who really wanted to understand the world of finance, I started that. And when we set aside, I'm going to put $500 a month into whatever account, I'm going to do it. Something comes up every month. My wife wanted to go on that trip or to Target. I wanted to go buy a new thing for the truck, whatever. We have all the excuses in the world. But when we make it automatic, these things begin to occur and we can't get in the way. And sometimes that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to stop ourselves from getting in our own way. And when we have a routine, decisions are made ahead of time. This improves the likelihood that we'll actually stick to the behaviors and that they'll be consistent with the goals that we've set. So automation, building these routines, creating these habits, it's all intertwined, it's all interconnected, and they all help us to get out of our own way and to build a structure that really supports us. One of the biggest things I see with college students and young adults is they listen to Tony Robbins or Dave Ramsey or whatever, and they want to be that. You're never going to be better than Tony Robbins. Tony Robbins is Tony Robbins. Be the best you. Take what works from Tony Robbins, take what works from Gary Vee, take what works from Dave Ramsey, and build your life and optimize that. And that is when you will see amazing results. As I mentioned, this all leads into living better. And that for me is the ultimate goal. For you, your goal might be a little bit different, but I want to live my best life. I want to show up for people energized and happy and positive. And when I don't use my routines, I'm not my best self. So these help us to build our habits, helps us to maintain and to improve the positive relationships that exist in our life. And for some of you, creativity might be something you struggle with. Like me, I'm not very creative. As you can see, my slides stick to the branding. I'm not super out there with things moving, but I do contemplate and study a lot of complex topics. So whether it's creativity or complex topics, your routines can help to free up the mental bandwidth or that cognitive space in order to focus on those things. Because these habits, again, these routines will grow into a space where it doesn't take any thought for me to do it. I just begin. And this quote, obviously taken out of context, nothing can bring you peace but yourself. And this is your call to be a proactive part of this process. Don't hear a routine that I suggest and say, yep, that's it. That's just a starting point. That's a point to give you a framework, and then maybe you tweak it, maybe you change it, and you find out how that works for you. Continuing on living better, our physical health. How many of y'all have been in a gym routine and then haven't? Or haven't and then you were? You know the difference. You know the difference. Even think of young kids as we're growing older, brushing our teeth, cutting our nails, washing our hands. At first, we need to be told. Sometimes it takes longer than we had hoped, and we need reminders. But eventually, this becomes a part of our everyday lives. And this allows us to function as better members of society. This allows us to stay healthier, physically and mentally. It can help us take back control of our lives. It can reduce stress and anxiety. And here's a big one. It can really help us to sleep better. Matthew Walker, also at Stanford University, who does a lot of research on sleep, he writes many books on this and many podcasts. When I was at year 7 in the Army, I hit my head and I was diagnosed with a traumatic brain injury. And as a result, I have residual migraines, but worse for me, it's difficult to fall asleep. When it's time for me to go to bed, I don't know about you all, but that's when I think about all the things. I didn't respond to that email. I forgot to call Bree back. The dishes are dirty downstairs. And we kind of get caught up in the thinking. So I met with a psychiatrist on post and I said, hey, I'm just not sleeping great. I'm on my way out and I just really like to address this. And the first question and the only task he gave me was, what is your bedtime routine, and build one. And his recommendations, which I still follow today, 1 hour before bed, no technology. And I can almost guarantee there's probably very few people in this room and that we know who actually do know technology. I'm laying in bed, haven't been on the computer or my phone for an hour, and I just hear my wife's TikTok going, just scrolling through. I can't do that. That disrupts my ability to sleep. 30 minutes before bed, a glass of herbal tea with 1 drop of magnesium and honey. 20 minutes before bed, I brush my teeth. Now, the first few weeks, it changed nothing. It was just this thing I had to do. But by about day 10, week 2 or 3, what happened is, oh, okay, brush my teeth. Oh, now my eyes are getting heavy. It started to trigger to my brain, hey, we're getting ready for bed. We know that every time this guy does X, Y, and Z, 20 minutes later, we're laying down. And it allows the neuroplasticity of my brain to start rewiring how it is that I actually prepare myself for bed. And there's so many other tools that we can implement with that as well. And one, which I'll talk about more in morning routines, that evening low angle solar sunlight, right? So as the sun is going down at a low angle, we can actually sit outside for 10 minutes and absorb that. And that starts to trigger to our brain to create the hormones that we'll be using as we go to sleep. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in a future slides. Also taken out of context, Virginia Woolf, love her, amazing author. You cannot find peace by avoiding life. So again, a call that we are leaning into this. The things that we can control, we would like to control. So what do they look like? Oh man, they can look different for everybody. For some of us, we're that top right? I need to block out every little part of my day and build it out. I've tried that. I don't love it. That for me just becomes a bit too rigid. Maybe in my 9 to 5, I can do that. But for the other parts of life, I need to be a little bit more flexible. For others, it can look like the left. This is Andrew Huberman's morning routine. I follow 60% of this. But for me, it's not time blocked. It's just, hey, I have a 2-hour morning routine, whether I start it at 6 or 8 or whatever. It's the same routine, but it's not locked into certain time blocks. So for me, I wake up, I do cold exposure. I've got an ice bath at my house. I'm a huge fan. I do sea salt in my water. That helps to get me hydrated first thing. It also is studies suggest it helps with migraines. And then I go into, for me, my morning Bible study, prayers, meditations, kind of the quietness of the morning. For me, my morning routine is important because that's the one part of my day that can't get stolen. Once I leave my house, I have way less control than I would like. The church might need me, my students might need me, I might just get distracted, right? Things take off. So for me, the morning routines is where I protect those non-negotiables in my life. I read 10 pages of nonfiction. I do several different things, and some other resources you can use is 75 Hard is a big one that people have been doing the last few years in terms of setting up new habits, and they kind of would encourage that you do a block of that in the morning, and that's very helpful. And then you see on the bottom right what we typically see, right? Like, hey, I know I have to do cardio and run on Monday, Wednesday, Friday, or Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday. I know on the days in between, I'm going to do some weightlifting or some resistance training. For me, I do the sauna 4 days a week. That's not always the same 4 days. So my routine is that 4 days I do it. But the flexibility in my routine is that it could be Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, or Thursday, Friday. It could be Monday, Wednesday, Friday, Saturday. I have flexibility built into that. But what I'll say is there's no right answer. Again, taken out of context, there's no right answer except to play and experiment. And that holds true with these routines. And I'm going to emphasize playing and having fun here shortly. So what? Okay, you've sold us. I hope we get it. Routines are great. Routines are going to help improve my life. But what do I do? How do I actually do this? Well, we need to assess our current routines. We need to play with those routines. And I say play instead of work or rebuild because I think being playful with it is important. This is not something that you're going to build the perfect routine and the next day you've got more energy and you feel like you've taken the magic drug of life that is going to make everything better. Routines are going to take time and you need to have some fun with it. We need to be aware of the limitations and the pitfalls. And there are some of those. And you need to keep moving forward. If by day 3 it hasn't worked, give it a little bit of time. If by week 3 it didn't work, cool, what can I adjust? What am I feeling? And we'll break out each of these just a little bit. So In assessing your current routines, I'd like you all to just think about, and you're welcome to share in the chat or just think to yourself and maybe write it down so you can examine later. What routines currently exist in your life? And we kind of opened up with this. We started thinking about some of those routines. Maybe now, 30 minutes in, it's like, ooh, I've thought of a few more routines that kind of exist. Are these conscious routines? Are these routines that you decided you wanted to partake in? Or are they subconscious? Are they things that you've kind of fallen into? Hey, my kid had to get to school. I started taking him to school. Oh, and I had to give him breakfast. Oh, and I needed coffee before that. So my morning routine has just kind of subconsciously evolved. Do you have control over these? Are they dictating your day, or are you dictating them so that you can decide what your day looks like? And can they be changed or improved? Can they be changed or improved? Sometimes we want to change those things that we can't change. I want to focus on the ones that we can change or improve.
And Nico, if we could dive in a little bit here, I'm interested to kind of talk about the pros and cons of those conscious routines versus those subconscious routines. You know, the subconscious, okay, you just arrive and it's time for the kids to get out of the car. So what can you explain a little bit? What are some of the pros and cons of subconscious versus conscious?
Yeah, I would say for me, as I reflect on that question, these subconscious routines notify me or put up a flag for me to say, okay, these are things that willingly or unwillingly I have identified as a priority, right? Because I didn't decide this. So I have recognized getting my kids to school is a priority. I have recognized that I need coffee, whether it's because the kids or whether it's because, hey, I just need that coffee first thing in the morning. So once I recognize, okay, these subconscious routines became what they are because of the priorities of my life, right? Courtney, my boss, she loves talking. If I look at your calendar, I know your priorities. Well, if I look at those subconscious routines, I see what your priorities are. And now in that recognition, we have the ability to take control of that and say, okay, well, I've recognized I need coffee, but the science also suggests that if I drink coffee when I first wake up, it's a hindrance. And that's why I feel that crash at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. Where if biologically I know I need about 90 minutes for the adenosine to flush out of my system, and that's the hormone that makes us feel sleepy, and then I drink my coffee after that, I'll actually avoid most likely that crash that I feel in the afternoon. Well, okay, now I just took that subconscious, which was good because it identified my priorities, but the con was that I wasn't in control of it, and I'm able to bring it together to optimize it for me and for my life. Not only based on my goals, but based on biology and the way in which I live.
Thank you for that, Nico. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. So let's continue through thinking about this, right? I hope you all have thought about some of these. Okay, we know some of my current routines. What we need to do next is we need to start playing with those. Okay, let me assess that routine, just like we talked about. A perfect example. I have this morning routine, but the morning routine is controlling me. I'm not able to control the morning routine. So now this is where we get to look at the routines in our lives that we can control. That's important. The ones that we can control. I want to take ownership of that. Hey, I've just been doing what I subconsciously do. Here's the things or the time period in which I do these things. I'm going to own that and I'm going to start adjusting it. Maybe I'm going to incorporate the morning early sunlight. When the sun is still at a low angle, I'm going to go outside, take off all my glasses. I'm not going to look at the sun, but I'm going to sit outside and maybe drink my water, kind of get hydrated. And what does that do? Well, it helps to flush out those hormones. It also triggers to my body, hey, I'm waking up. In about 16 hours, I'll probably be going to bed. So already we're impacting not only our morning routine and how we feel throughout the day, but we're impacting what happens when it's time to go to bed. And I want to observe the impacts of these changes. Sometimes we're going to make a change and we're going to say, it's been a miserable 3 weeks. I tried to incorporate a workout routine and I went way too hard. I thought I was going to be Arnold Schwarzenegger. And sometimes we're going to incorporate one and be like, wow, my piece of life has been amazing. It has vastly improved. And then, cool, I'm going to lock that in. I'm going to keep developing. And this is an ongoing task for all of us, not only because we have not just morning and evening routines, but work routines and other routines that we'll talk about, but because, as we mentioned earlier, life happens. I can't think of a single routine in my life that I will not have to renegotiate once I have children. And again, I know there's a lot of parents in here, and I know you're probably just laughing like you don't even know. I I'm aware. I don't know, but I do understand that there's going to be a huge impact. So this is an ongoing playful development of how do I continue to improve my life based on the situation, based on the routines and habits that I think are a priority or that I feel will impact my life for the positive. So let me talk a little bit about my routines, and not so much because they're what I do specifically, but it will help us to be aware of the different routines. I've mentioned the morning routines. For some of us, it's simple. It's just, hey, I want to journal. I want to incorporate gratitude. I want to just get my kids to school so I can get back home and take a deep breath. Morning routines can be vastly different from person to person. Same with evening routines. Most of those should be encouraging healthy sleep and or processing and helping you to prepare for your next day. So some of us, maybe we lay out our clothes or the kids' clothes. Maybe we make a task list or we check our calendar. We're just building ourselves up for the next day so that we can enter that with the most peace and confidence. We have event-based routines and trigger-based. And I mention these both together because this is where we kind of see where habits kind of overlaps a little bit. Okay, there's a cue that initiated this routine. Some would call that a habit. Some would call that a routine. But for me, event-based, I do worship every other Thursday and Bible study every Wednesday. Based on that event, there's a routine that occurs before that. And I know that on Thursday, I'm going to come in, I'm going to maybe order pizza at 4 p.m. to be delivered at 8 p.m. I'm going to stock the fridge. I'm going to get the space prepared for students to arrive. At 5:30, I'm going to jump on my first class because I'm also in grad school again because I'm a glutton for punishment and I just love learning. I'm going to have 10 minutes between that class and my next class. I know a few students will be there, so I'll connect with them. I'll make sure they've got everything they need. I'll jump on my next class. And then 15 minutes before worship starts, I finish class. I go to the bathroom. I get some water. I go hug some students. And then I jump out there and it's, hey, welcome to worship. And I get into the night. I get into what we will do. But that event is what changes that routine. So it doesn't matter what day I might move worship to, that event will trigger a certain routine to happen. Trigger-based routines, for me, I think more about the emotional responses. I grew up in the 90s with a very stern and very rational father. I spent 7 years in Ranger Regiment. I have a certain personality, typically described as historically alpha male, and I can get excited and I can get what seems to be aggressive when I'm excited about things. So when I feel my speech becoming more rapid, when I feel my heart rate going up, when I feel my face is getting hot because I'm angry or embarrassed or frustrated, that is a trigger for me to go into one of my routines. And that might be a certain breathing pattern to help renegotiate and recontrol my emotions. That might be some type of touching my lips or expanding my peripheral vision so that way I can re-engage the autonomic nervous system. There's so many different tools that we can use for that. Sometimes it might be, hey, time to go for a run. You're getting too frustrated. You've been on the computer all day. Things aren't going right. You're feeling this frustrated. Go for a run. Go expend some energy. And we also have family and faith routines. I know that every Sunday at 12:30, I'm going to my mother-in-law's house, whether I put it on my calendar or not, for lunch. That's part of our family routine. I know that on Saturday, I need to find at least some time to sit with my wife. She's a teacher during the day. I'm basically a teacher at night. There are times that we have to protect by using routines our ability to see one another. and faith routines. Christmas comes around for those of different faiths, Hanukkah, Kwanzaa. We just had a fall festival, right? Harvest on Third. Every year for the last 3 years, us, St. Luke, Holy Family, we come together, we do this thing. That's a routine now that we've set into practice. And to be honest, even without promoting it, people would be like, wait, it's October. This event must be coming up, because we've become so ritualized and so oriented to routines that are in our lives. Again, sometimes we don't observe them, but our bodies, our minds, they know they're there. That's a lot of us might experience seasonal depression. It's not necessary that something happened today. It's that it's getting colder, it's getting darker. My body knows where this is going. And I hate the isolation and loneliness that I experience in the winter times and the dark, long days. That's a routine. Now, that's one that we can't control so much. So we have to use other routines and other tools like counseling and therapy and engaging with our friends in order to combat that. But again, if we can become aware of it, then we can begin to take action. Just a few buyer bewares. You've got to know yourself. Okay. If you jump on YouTube and you type in perfect morning routine, you got about 10,000 different videos of people that are completely unqualified telling you exactly what you should do, and it might not work for you. And you might have to pick and choose and discern what is best for you. Even those like Andrew Huberman, who have research and degrees and PhDs and all kinds of letters after their name that qualify them to speak on this, it still might not be perfect for you. So you need to know thine self. That will help you so much. Stay flexible, but have structure, right? I want the flexibility that if I wake up late, my whole day is not ruined because my morning routine is messed up. So flexibility might mean I can shift that a little bit. Flexibility might mean I have 4 non-negotiables and 5 other things on my morning routine, and I'm going to drop the 5 other things today. For me, I read at least 1 hour a day of non-work, non-school related stuff, still nerd stuff. I love nonfiction. It's still going to be deep and dense, but it's what I want to read. There's no time for that. I just know that 1 hour each day, when I find it, whether that is I've hit the end of the day, time's up, I'm going to read before bed, or whether that's, hey, I've had a coaching session cancel, or I've had a lunch session change. Now I've got some time and I'll read. Give it time. Don't rush this progress. Allow yourself some time to process, some time for your body to adjust to these new routines that you're introducing into your lives. There's nothing worse than setting a time limit to it, and then you become frustrated with yourself and you become frustrated that it's not working. So baby steps moving forward. I'm probably not going to change my whole morning routine tomorrow, but I might change 1 or 2 things and give it a few days to see how that settles. And ask for help, whether that's inviting in a friend or family member. Hey, I'm working on this. I'd love for you to let me know if you see my emotions change, or if you see me getting frustrated. I'd like to know if you see the physical improvements I'm looking for based on my fitness or dietary routine. It might even be talking to your doctor. Hey, based on these medical issues, I'm trying to change my routine. I'd love if I can do blood work in 6 weeks and reassess and see how that is improving or not improving my body and my situation. So what now, as we begin to wrap up and we prepare to get into questions, what do we do? You just blew our minds open, and now I'm like questioning all my routines, and you didn't give me all the answers to fix it. What do I do? Well, first of all, I can't give you all the answers, because what works for me might not be what works for you. Also, we're limited in time. We're all, I imagine many of you are on a lunch break or just before lunch trying to get in this. And I think it's awesome that you're here, and I appreciate it. But continue to build and assess your progress. Start playing with it on your own. This is something you could do completely on your own and continue to kind of see where it goes. Like I said, invite others in. Tell some people at work, hey, I'm trying to throw in this new lunchtime routine where I eat lunch and have a conversation on a topic or whatever. Would you like to be a part of that? Hire a coach. You can find a coach through the Leadership Institute, many coaches that are happy to discuss and navigate the world of routines. a lot of individual coaching ends up revolving around habits and routines and goal setting. So most coaches are going to have some ability to talk with you about this. And in coaching, you decide what you're working on. So if it's habits, you just show up and they're going to be ready and willing to unpack that with you. You could also host a workshop. Again, the Leadership Institute has facilitated all different kinds of trainings and opportunities to learn things. So hosting a workshop and being able to kind of go into what I would call phase 2 of this presentation of, hey, let's build out some routines. Let's write down on paper the routines that exist in our lives, and let's reflect with one another. What could I put here? What could I put there? What are some things I'm not aware of that Andrew Huberman or Cal Newport or these other authors and researchers might be talking about today? But ultimately, it all begins with you. And I hope that you will continue to take what we've talked about today and just reflect on the routines that exist in your life, how they can be improved. And I hope that at some point I see you in Columbus or beyond and you say, hey, I changed some things and man, it's been great. Or even I changed some things and it stunk, but eventually I figured it out and it's been very helpful. So I am so thankful for all of you. And now we will lead into questions because I do want to answer any of those that you may have.
Thank you, thank you, thank you, Nico. This was an awesome and insightful presentation and topic for you to present today. So we just appreciate you as always. For me, I think that my 3 biggest takeaways is that it's establishing a routine is as easy as looking at some of those subconscious routines and adding structure to that. I think a lot of us, when we think about routines, we try to wrap our minds around the what if this happens, what if that happens, and it's always scenario based. But just think about what you do on a daily basis, some of those routines, and then just building structure to it. Another big takeaway and a question that I need to reflect on is, what is one part of the day that is yours? Nico talked a little bit about his morning routine and how that's just something that is his non-negotiable. So I think that it's very important for us to think about what our non-negotiables are when it comes to that part of the day. And you still have to be flexible, as Nico said, because, you know, if that doesn't happen, don't let it derail your whole day. So that is another big takeaway for me, as well as knowing yourself. I think that that was another thing that Nico talked about, and it relates to the trigger-based routines that you may experience. I know for myself, you know, just being at work, if I feel myself being overwhelmed or feeling like I can't catch up, it's because I'm not utilizing my calendar and time blocking. So for me, those are one of the things where I know I'm not, you know, in line with my normal routine, and that helps me to remember. So I think that finding out what those trigger-based emotions and feelings are will help you to get back to the roots and get back to your routine. And Brian here says coaches need coaching too. So thank you for that reset from Brian. I am totally on the line with what you said. Another person said, I realize now I need to adjust some routines to be sure that I have the best work-life balance. And I think this is all what Nico was telling us about throughout this presentation. It's just to help us to, you know, create that best environment and be the best you that we can be. So if there are not any other questions, feel free to continue to drop them in, but I will let you all know the next steps from here. So just thank you all for joining us today. I will make a recording, the recording of this presentation available on our YouTube channel, CSU Leadership Institute. So our YouTube channel within 48 business hours. If you want us to email this information to you, go ahead and enter your email address in the chat. We will be back next month for our November webinar, and that is going to be focused on letting go of this is how we've always done it. So in this webinar, we will discuss how to empower your team to focus on what they can do better. So that one is also going to be another great reflective activity. So please invite your team members and encourage them to come. With all of that being said, thank you for your engagement and interest in today's topic. On behalf of the Leadership Institute, thank you. If you have any other topic ideas, I'm planning the 2025 series schedule. So if you have any topic ideas on business disruptors or just some of those everyday topics that we don't get to talk about often, but when they come up, you are glad that they did, such as routines and something as simple as creating those routines and habits. So please email us if you want to see your topic featured in next year's series at leadershipinstitute@columbusState.edu. And again, thank you all for joining us. I hope that you enjoy your lunch hour after you hop off. Bye-bye.